Don Dowling with here, so we can get started. Are we up on YouTube?
Just about there. We're there.
All right, Don Dowling with here, so, and then you can. All right, great. So I would like to call the July 20th, 2022 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. In attendance is myself, David Gerstenhaber, Jim Johnson, and Don Dowling. Also in attendance are Township Operations Manager Jeffrey Eastburn and Township Controller and Office Manager Melissa Ortega. I don't believe Sarah joined us, so Sarah is not on the call. And also joining us is Township Solicitor Guy Tonatelli. And there are how many members of the? Looks like four members of the public. All right, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to a republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, justice for all. Okay, thank you. Now we'll open up for public comments. Public comment may include any comments relating to tonight's agenda items. Commenters must state their names and whether you are a township resident or a non-resident taxpayer in the township. If you do not identify yourself, your comments will not be included in the official minutes. Any public comment? Okay, not hearing any comments. Jim?
Okay. So did everybody have a chance to read the workshop meeting minutes from June 15th?
Yes.
Okay, if so, I'd like to make a motion to approve version 1 of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes held on June 15th.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All right,
No.
seeing all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, or any say nay? Okay. The motion is granted.
Motion carries 3-0. Okay, Don.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Eric Espen,
Pete Eisenbrown.
Pete Eisenbrown, I'm sorry, on the MS4.
Thank you, Dawn. In your packet, you have a letter July 1st regarding a meeting that was held with the Big Elk Creek Consortium. And Jeff was so kind to provide you with a brief one-page overview. He's got a letter dated July 12th. So,
And Pete, before you go any further, you can share your screen if you wish.
okay, my hair may not look the best tonight, but no problem.
That's okay.
So the way this works is some of you may be familiar with the MS4 project. It's really tough to get into all the nitty gritty on something like that tonight. So there could be a separate discussion on that if necessary, but there's basically two programs. The one is the TMDL and the other is the PRP plan. For those of you familiar with it, it's been idle for almost 2 years. And that's maybe a result of COVID and DEP and restructuring there. And we have permits, applications pending as the township. I think a lot of other municipalities do. And unfortunately, we're kind of in this holding pattern until we get feedback one way or the other. The result of this consortium meeting was a very interesting idea that PennDOT is doing a project. They're actually doing MS4 themselves, which I'm kind of surprised, but I'm glad that they are also doing it. Originally, we thought they might be exempt from that, but they're doing a project in a different municipality, but within the watershed where your PRP program is located. And the concept is that you would be able to buy into their project. So you need, if you look in the July 1st letter, what you would need to reduce in so many pounds per year of sediment is how this is accounted for. You would be able to buy into that, and they would simply extend their project that they're doing. If they're doing a mile worth of stream and your amount translates into another quarter mile of stream, you write them a check and they take care of all the hassle. So that's a very interesting concept. So when you look at the bottom of page 2, you would need, with the current PRP plan, if you don't get a waiver, which we'll talk about in a second, you would need 69,000 pounds. And at the going rate of, I think it's $2 a pound, it equates to a value of $138,000. Now that may seem like a big number, but that pales in comparison, for those of you familiar with this, to take on a project of designing a project, the maintenance of it, the permitting necessary for it, and everything else that goes with it. It'd be very complicated. So this is an interesting concept to have it at a regional level. I think it'd be a very good thing if you can get in on it. And again, we had conversations before, some of you were familiar with, if you did a stream restoration project, and I know that wasn't your first choice, you can imagine if that washes out, you're responsible for that here. Someone else is taking care of that maintenance. So it's an interesting concept. PennDOT would also be looking at ultimately doing a project on the TMDL side of the township, as I'll call it. I think they'll roll out a similar program with that similar concept. I don't have the dollar figure for that, since that's not official yet of what that would be. So the bottom line, this was great information to hear. The challenge we face is you need to either have your permit in hand to be able to commit to this project. And unfortunately, after 2 years and a lot of work leading up to that, we still don't have information on the waiver that we requested as the township for the PRP. And with that, we don't have an answer on our TMDL. So in the letter to Jeff, we had suggested reaching out to both DEP and your local representative. So we had reached out to DEP, about a week ago. And unfortunately, not surprisingly, the person we were dealing with has retired. And our Elizabeth Mahoney at DEP was looking into who has been reassigned to our permit and would get back to us. Unfortunately, we've not heard back from her yet for the timing of this meeting. The other thing we were able to do was reach out to Representative Lawrence's office and talk to one of his associates. Sherry is her name. And we provided her with an email and some background information with the theory that she could reach out to DEP to try to get or ascertain the status of this. Of course, the ideal thing would be if you're getting a waiver of the PRP plan, it's a non-issue and you don't have to worry about this side. And then these couple of minutes is all for naught right now. If for some reason they would give you the permit without the waiver, and they agree with our figures, you have a target number in hand of where, rather than going through all the design, the timing, the maintenance, long-term, all this stuff, you could write a check potentially to do that. There's no action necessary for you tonight on this. It's more information. I think it's good information, and perhaps we can try to ascertain the status of this. There's a time frame. We don't exactly know what that is for PennDOT's project. They're actively designing the project. I'm not sure of the construction start date, but it's not an open-ended thing. At some point, you would have to buy into this so they would know how far they're going to need to go with their project. And with that, I'll just kind of stop and see if anybody has any questions, but that's just really it was more for informational purposes and maybe to test the board's temperature on if it's a concept that they would perhaps like to go down versus doing it on your own.
Don or Jim, do you have any questions for Pete?
Well, it sounds like that might be the right road to take.
How many possibilities would we have in our township? So is it for large streams, small streams, anything that goes through?
Well, Jim, there's a lot of background here. I'll try to there are very specific areas within the township where you can and can't do projects. It's driven by census data and urbanized areas and things like that. And there's very specific rules of where you can and can't do projects. In the TMDL zone, the original plan targets retrofit, and please don't quote me on this, I'll say 30 existing old school style detention basins. So that would involve studying each one, going and doing a project in each one. It might be putting amended soils in the bottom, restricting the outlet structures, things like that. But it's a large undertaking. They're all privately owned basins with 30 different HOAs or individuals. So while it physically could be done and is relatively simple work, it's the sheer quantity of it. And then all the logistics that go with that have really not been worked through as of yet. In comparison, the PRP plan, we have no existing basins within that watershed. The only really viable option is to build a new detention facility, which is we wouldn't recommend that, or stream restorations. There are streams in that vicinity. However, the prior board, when those items were discussed, they really frowned upon stream restoration for multiple reasons. If it washed out again, the impact to private property and things like that, because you don't own any land within that watershed. So if you had a township park, we know we have Crossan Park on the other side of the township, and some members, when we had presentation, this goes back years ago, they thought DEP is not going to go for cutting down trees and destroying areas that are eroded to fix the erosion. I disagree with that in some sense. Otherwise, the erosion never gets fixed. You'd have to go in and do a little destruction to permanently fix it. But at the time, that was frowned upon. So different ways to go at it. But to me, as Dawn indicated, I think this would be the best way to go if it's something where you are not successful in the attempt for the waiver, to strongly consider compared to dollar estimates we provided in the past. And as everybody knows, costs today are just skyrocketing and through the roof. So it would even be worse if we tried to figure out in today's dollars what these would cost, and those projects are still years out.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So one of the things about MS4 that I've observed in my limited time here is that it can be a moving target, right? It's not necessarily what we need to do for MS4 may change year to year. So when I say we're buying these credits, we're now part of this larger municipal group. How do we control what they're going to do so it absolutely satisfies our MS4 requirements, right? So we give them this money to do a project. Are we then done? Or is this just this year's, cost of doing business, and then we'll talk about it again next year? I'm not sure if I'm asking my question well, but this is, yeah.
Yeah, what I can, the short explanation I can give you, Dave, is the MS4, I believe it's a 5-year rolling program. So this is round one of the process. There's round two. So every 5 years. So they will ultimately want a continual reduction. And you can imagine PennDOT would fall to the same requirements. And so this might be a stream where they're just going to go on for miles and miles every 5 years and just restore it if it's picking up the majority of the water in the watershed. And that's not a bad thing. It's very tough to do this on a very local basis where there's not the big impact. So I've always thought regional, and I'm sorry, my dog barking here. The regional basis is a much easier way to handle it, assuming it's cost effective. And I think this is. So it would cover, and I don't know the specifics of the mechanics where, okay, with this check, you get some receipt that says, okay, Franklin Township has satisfied its 2020 PRP requirements. And then you deal with that, gets you 5 years. And in 5 years, it's on to round next. But that mechanics, that question could be asked, and we could figure that out.
I think that would be helpful.
And how much control we have in our township, because I actually live on one of the one of the feeders for the Elk Creek. So I have a vested interest in that, but yeah, I'm just interested in how much control if we bought in. I mean, does that give us any?
Do they get carte blanche, do whatever they want?
Well, they already have if I understand the question, they already have a targeted area
Okay.
of where they're going. It's not in your township.
Okay.
The letter may list that. So they already have a project where the PennDOT is going to satisfy their requirements. And like I said originally, if there's a mile of stream that they're doing to satisfy it, 5 townships buy on, and now it turns into 2 miles of stream restoration. So
Right.
you write the check and it's kind of set it and forget it. And they deal with all the design. It's already there, the construction, the timelines, the delays, the permitting, long-term maintenance, things like that. So that's the concept as we understand it. Obviously, there's more information and the legality of it to look into. So tonight was just an idea to present this opportunity for the township, and then to try to get an answer. If we don't have, we need to know if we need to do the PRP or not. If it's a waiver, it's a moot point. But if it's not a waiver, we would need to know, okay, well, when can we get this approval? Because if we miss this window, you may be stuck doing all the construction yourself at a much significant more cost.
Yeah. What, I'm sorry, what's the window? When do we, so you said we don't need to make a decision tonight. So
Right.
we're not going to.
Yeah.
When do we need to make a decision?
Right. I think what we need an answer from DEP, and then we can follow up with the consortium and PennDOT if they have what a hard deadline would be. I don't know if they gave them one. My guess, Dave, is if the representative, because there's other municipalities in this same bunch that I don't know if DEP is waiting to issue half a dozen Chester County permits at one time, or they're waiting on decisions for other reasons. It's hard to know. So my guess is if the representatives knew there were multiple townships involved, they'd find a way to extend the time frame for them to get in on it, to get PennDOT to act. So there needs to be some intermunicipal cooperation here. So again, maybe talking to some other representatives, and as we try to maybe get some traction, once we know a little more, it could all start to fall together. That's my hope.
So when you think about time frame, this is a conversation we can have in the August meeting, or is this something you're thinking like months, 6 months, you know?
No, I think it's got to happen in the next month. We need to try to get an answer. And so hopefully Representative Lawrence's office will have some success with that.
Okay.
And then we could know which way we have. If we get the waiver, we're done talking about it for now. If we don't, the question is, when is our PRP approval coming? Because we need to have a fixed number in order to potentially buy into this, and then we could window down the timeline. So those would be my 2 goals till August meeting, if not sooner. Obviously, I don't control that to the extent that I am. I'll do what I can.
So I don't think it's this dire, but we meet twice. We meet August 1st for a workshop meeting, which there should be a quorum there. And then August 17th would be our next board meeting. So if it's within August, you have 2 opportunities for us to discuss this.
Yep, and obviously I will shoot to find out what I can for August 1st. And if other members of the board are talking with representatives or wanted to reach out to Representative Lawrence's office themselves, you can feel free to do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So before Pete goes, any other questions that we might want to have Pete work on before we move on?
I'm good.
All right, great. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Good night, everyone.
Hey, could we ask Pete questions before he goes?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, Paul, if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead.
Yeah, because if we wait till the end, he's gone, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So, Pete, we're doing a lot of riparian buffer work, very large one on the Keene Farm and Crossing Park and Franklin Preserve. And I thought that might count toward our MS4 requirements. Does it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. That's on the TMDL side. So that's not the PRP side, unfortunately, with the way the water.
Where is the PRP side? Remind me of what part of the township.
I'll say the eastern side.
Well, the Keene Farm is about as east as it gets.
I'm sorry, I meant the other east-west side.
The other east side.
All
Like
right,
the other left.
I guess I'll have to see a map because, Crossing Park's in the middle. So is that the elk watershed maybe, or I mean,
That's the
Chesapeake?
Christina, if I'm not mistaken. So there are plenty of maps out there, Paul, and we can provide that. But again, these things are very watershed based.
Yeah, I think my point is I just want to make sure the township is getting credit for the work we're doing on riparian buffer so that we don't pay into a program unnecessarily.
Right. And I think the way my response to that would be, as long DEP's got to buy into that. With some areas where you've done work and we tried to do that, they said, no, the work was no good. It was done too premature and they wouldn't go for it. We fought long and hard for that. And that's
No, but
not
these are recent, Pete. We did
correct.
these this year and we're doing one in the fall. So these would be
Yes.
more applicable.
Yes, correct. So what I would think is maybe if those projects on their own, I'll say it this way, get you to your goal in the TMDL project, well, then obviously it's a non-issue. If it gets you partially there, then you would only pay for the difference, so to speak, for obvious reasons. But that's a good concept.
So are you aware of how many acres we've planted, or is someone communicating that to you, or do we need to?
I forget the two people's names. I know it's Ellen Kohler and Jeff. Who's the other lady?
Shane Morgan.
Thank you, Shane. I know they've been, I think, in touch with Jessica, and we were aware of those projects. I don't know if we have like a final tally of what those numbers are, but obviously that's out there of what they've planted and locations. And I'm sure Shane can, provide a map if there's not already one out there.
And then, I mean, I'm not a supervisor, but I'd be interested to know, like, if there's a target area, like if you said, hey, next year you should really try to target this area of the township and save yourself some money, that would be really helpful to know. That would be good information for us to try to do our next project.
Sure. I think some of the projects have been within those watersheds where you have areas to do it and have been through the grants and the programs that Shane and company and the township staff have been able to work out. And I'm sure you're included in that. So that's all good. I think there's not been a push to design formal retrofits or anything like that until you would have permits in hand, because otherwise we're just spinning our wheels. So these riparian buffers are good projects, no matter what, and hopefully would be put into the mix and count towards your projects. At least that's the goal. Ultimately, DEP has that final say, but sure, we can tell you.
Yeah, because I mean, that's how Joan sold it to the board, was that it was going to count toward our MS4 is my recollection, but.
Correct. But like Dave said, these MS4 things are moving targets.
All right. Well, I just wanted to bring it up to remind you all that, we've done several projects in the last 2 years with Shane and another one planned in the fall. So just make sure we get credit for it. That's all.
Yep. Appreciate that, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'll look into that for the August board meeting and just get a summary of what they've done to date, what's planned, and how that would fit into the picture credit wise. So we know if the TMDL would be approved as is, what that would account for.
Thank you, Pete. John, I see you're off mute. Did you have a comment on the MS4?
Yeah, I do. I guess just cautioning the board about stream restoration projects. I think there are 3 BMPs that you can use for MS4. One is stream restoration, tree planting. I don't remember the third. Pete may be able to fill us in on that, but the board was very concerned in the past about stream restorations because we had a project we looked at in Crossing Park. It was $110,000, something like that. And the concern we had was that one major summer storm just washes out your whole.
Yeah.
So those things are very fragile, and that's why the board focused on the tree planting. So I would just caution the board here about your liability of maintenance and repair after some storm washes one of these projects out. So I don't know how that would work with the project that Pete's proposing, but it's just a precaution for the board, and I'd explore your liability very carefully as to what happens if you lose the project due to a major storm. You get a 50 or 100-year storm in the summer here, it just takes them right out.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
All right, thanks, John. All right, so if there isn't anything else, thank you again, Pete, for coming and walking us through that.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll talk again in a couple of weeks.
Yep, I'll get you an update. No problem. Thank you very
All right, thank
much. Have a nice night.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, Melissa, you are on.
Okay, guys, so this is the June 2022 Treasurer's Report, which includes the following disbursements. The general fund with disbursements and transfers of $152,958.88. The Park and Recreation Fund with disbursements of $16,187.49. The Open Space Fund with disbursements of $23,417.96. The Capital Reserve Fund with disbursements of $0. The Emergency Services Fund with disbursements of $65,616.92. The Fire Hydrant Fund with disbursements of $0, leaving a balance in all funds totaling $1,974,000, $491.31.
All right, so I think I make the motion. Thank you, Melissa, for running through that. I make a motion that the board approve the June 2022 Treasurer's Report as presented by Melissa Ortega. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Dawn. Any discussion on the Treasurer's Report? Okay, not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 3-0.
Thank
All
you,
right,
everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
Melissa.
you, Melissa, for all your hard work on this. Okay, zoning officers report. This report is prepared by the zoning and code enforcement officer. It includes the number of permits processed, the number of inspections performed, and the funds received in the month of June 2022. In the month of June 2022, 11 permits were issued, $500 in building fees, $1,300 in miscellaneous fees, $0 in recreation, open space, and impact fees were collected. 21 inspections were performed. I don't believe we need any motion.
All right, thank you, Don. Jim.
So, yeah, I'd like to, I thought I saw Paul Agassi on for the Harb and Historical Committee report.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, I was muted, just want to double check. So the HARB did not meet this past month, but I did want to bring a few updates on some ongoing projects to the attention of the supervisors in the township. I have been meeting a couple times informally up at Churchill with Greg Sachs, Bob Magnus, and I dragged Dave Gerstenhaber and Jeff Eastburn up there the other day as well. In many cases, it's simply to get a sort of lay of the land. It's not going to be a simple cleanup job when volunteers start to work. We are going to need to wait for the leaves to die down, and it'll put us probably in November before we can seriously think about doing any heavy work up there. We may be able to do some light touch up, get rid of poison ivy in advance of having people sort of mucking around more generally. But I expect that we'll be starting cleanup this winter, and at that point we'll be talking, before we get there, we'll be talking about further issues with the township. We do, as I've mentioned before, have contact with Crystal Crampton, who is a member of the denomination that Churchill was originally part of when there was a church there, and she knows the pastor of the Galilee Church in Avondale, which is functionally the successor congregation. And they'll probably be looking at doing some cleanup on their own. And we will be coordinating with them and keeping them informed of what we're doing. I also spent some time with Nan Latimer talking with Emily Kilby. For those of you who don't know who she is, she's probably the foremost local, if not the foremost expert on the people who lived in what is now Fair Hill before it became part of Willie DuPont's lands and his estate. And Fair Hill, before the Strawbridge property was the Strawbridge property, it was acquired by Willie DuPont as part of his development for Fair Hill. She has done extensive research, and we gained significant insights on where to do further research on the properties we're aware of, and she shared all of her research with us. That said, it's going to be a little while since we wrap our minds around what's important, because we received tens of thousands of files totaling 38 gigabytes of data.
Wow.
So it's not an afternoon project, but we will be able to at least identify likely places of where we can cherry pick some important information. So that's all I have at the moment. Thank you for your time. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So one of the things that I know, Paul, quite literally dragged me into the woods to go see this, to see this cemetery. And, when I was describing to him a cemetery near my house, he says, "Oh no, this is much worse." And I, in my head, thought I would see a cemetery that's overgrown. And this is much more intense than that. I mean, this looks like a forest with some headstones thrown in there, and so it's going to be in my mind, a pretty technical cleanup. It's not just go in there with a bush hog and clean it out. It's going to be a technical cleanup. And do you have any thoughts on the kind of expertise you might need, or kind of labor you might need to get this done in a way that's both practical but kind of respects what we're doing?
I think that in many ways, we don't need a great deal of expertise. In other words, that people have a good sense to go about how cleaning up a mess after a thunderstorm, who can work with care and patience and realize that, this is not a project for a weekend or a month of weekends, or even, to be frank, a year of weekends. I see this as a multi-year project, but my hope is that through slow, methodical, careful work, we can get to the point where 1 or 2 light cleanups a year will keep this cemetery from becoming overgrown again. Now that we've got a good contact with Bristol Crampton, who is vice president of the Hallowed Grounds Project, now that I will say I'm sufficiently embarrassed in seeing how bad this place has become, that I hope we will not, clean it up and take our eyes off it. That's not to say that we need to be planning on going out there all the time, but when we get it to a place in which it's under control, we need to make sure that the shrubs don't start growing again, that young trees don't start growing. And we will find that even after we've cleaned up the grounds, you can look up and you can see that there's a dead tree caught in the boughs of another tree. And at some point that will come down. We're not going to attempt to bring anything down of any significance. We're just trying to get the situation under control. I see this as really just a long, patient, steady project where you get out there and you do what you can in the time you have that day. You take a look at what you've accomplished and you plan for the next day you're going to come out, and that's what the next 2 years will look like.
Paul, did you have any, I mean, the interest from the sister church? I mean, are they willing
So,
to?
basically, I'm letting Crystal handle all that.
Okay.
So she has extensive experience in not only preserving, but then helping to restore Bucktoe
Mhm.
Cemetery,
Right,
which is outside Kennett.
yeah.
So, I mean, she's really one of the go-to people, and the fact that we now have a working relationship with her
That's
is a really
great.
great thing. So I'm letting her handle that end of it.
Yeah,
She's fine with us going ahead and slowly accomplishing what we can do. And it is what it is. It took a
Yeah,
long
that's
time to
great.
get this way. It'll take a long time to clean it up, but it'll be, if someone, if a group like the FSA is looking to put in their volunteer hours, they got a little gold mine here, unfortunately. So,
They've actually been
and I'm
looking
sure,
forward to it.
we can, there will be other opportunities, Crystal's talking about, organizing some church members to get out there and,
Do you think there's any records left of any of the people or any of the information?
no, we have, some of the work in determining that sort of information is actually much easier than the cleanup is going to be. There are fairly extensive records online, and Nan Latimer and Sally Gallagher have spent a fair amount of time working to compile this information, what we know,
That's
because
great.
in some cases it's pretty slim, and putting it into a spreadsheet so that people can browse their way through it.
Mhm.
We also have various associated photographs that a fellow by the name of Jonathan Hoppy, who took an interest in the property and posted a lot of material on Find a Grave. We've downloaded that and brought that into our files.
Wow.
We're building on the bits of work that everybody has done, and I suspect with time we'll be able to expand this. But for now, we know we found 13 headstones. We suspect that other stones that look like natural stones may be grave markers that were they were stones used by people who could not afford a large or carved headstone. We have, in addition to the 13 headstones, some of them are for Civil War veterans.
Wow.
We have, I want to say about a dozen veterans, but it's somewhere between 10 and 12. So
Yeah.
that the majority of whom were involved with the U.S. colored troops during the Civil War. We also have information that indicates that there are in total more than 100 people buried there, even if the records are faulty and we're off by 50%. That's still 50 to 60 people.
Wow.
So, we'll get there eventually, but it'll be slow. I can imagine talking about this forever. Because if it won't be about, the day I talk about we've gotten the cleanup to the point where where we want it to be, I will be talking about, and now we have a plan for going forward to get out there once or twice a year for an inspection and what I hope will be light cleanup. And when a tree comes down, that will have to be cleaned up. That will be more significant. The idea is to keep, more trees from growing, stabilize the site. But it's the idea is not to open this up as an especially public place. It's a cemetery that is in a location that where there's not a lot of traffic. If you had a situation where somebody wanted to do what vandals do, it would probably be easy to accomplish it there. And I really don't want to see that happen. So, like I said, this is a long-term thing, but I feel like I can see the start of the project coming closer. And that, and by that, I mean the start of the project on the ground. So I'm happy for that.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
So any other questions from the group for Paul?
Paul Overton? Or
Yeah, hi, Paul.
is that what you said? I mean, Dave, I thought
No,
you said.
he's talking. He's asking if there's
Anyone else?
Paul.
Anyone else in the group have a question for Paul?
Lagasse.
Lagasse? Not.
Well, I do. That's why I was hoping you were talking to me.
Okay,
yeah,
go
sure.
ahead.
So, Paul, I mean, I've been involved with you on this, and we've gone to see, and I've seen the degradation over the 18 years I've been here. Like the Civil War Star is gone. Somebody stole that,
Oh,
and more trees are down. And I actually think the neighbor paved over some of the graves in the back where they put in a new driveway. So I think my 2 cents would be, I appreciate you doing it, and I don't want to tell you how to do more, but contact the neighbor and at least let them know of the existence of the graveyard so that they're not one day bush hogging into that hedgerow and knock down more tombstones or something, So that's my first thought, is just let the neighbor know as a courtesy there's a graveyard there. And they might know already, but the proximity of their driveway tells me they don't know. And then the second point would be, I think cleaning it up is good. And I assume you're doing it kind of out of respect for the people buried there. But you made a good point there at the end, was what my concern is. If you make it too nice, it'll invite people to visit, people you don't want to go in there. Kids looking for a place to hide is what I'm talking about. And so I think cleaning up's a good idea. I would request that you don't cut down any trees, let the trees go, clear the weeds and invasives. That's a great idea. But maybe a more respectful thing to do would be just put up one of those blue historical marker signs and say, this was the site of the church on Churchill Road, and give a little history about it, and not commit to build steps or clean it up all the time. You know what I mean? That might be a better way to respect the people that are buried there rather than weed whacking.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and frankly, this is a complicated issue that we've talked about. First of all, I don't see us going in there and weed whacking. What we'll be trying to do is get the shrubby stuff under control. We're talking about a lot of Russian olive and multicolor rose and things of that sort, as well as vines and poison ivy. We're not going out of our way to cut down any trees, but I think it's appropriate not to let additional trees grow up and totally overwhelm the site. And in any case, ultimately, I'm going to be proceeding kind of in conjunction with Crystal Crampton. So I suspect that she might well prefer something that was even more open. than I think is desirable. But I think that we will come to a happy medium where it's not obvious that there's a cemetery there. And in fact, you know, Paul, the historic marker sort of thing that you talked about is sort of interesting because we've kicked that around. And one of the things that we decided on the historical commission is that we would not, even if we put a historical marker, we would not want it right by the cemetery because that's, from our point of view, too close to the cemetery. So we would try and handle it some other way. And I couldn't tell you what that way is because we can't settle in our own heads what we think would be the smartest approach. But yeah, we're not, you know, I'm not unaware of your concerns, and we go back and forth on this when we talk about it with the historical commission. It's
For commenting on Crystal cutting down the trees, the more trees you cut down, the less canopy you have, the faster the underbrush and the weeds grow. That's why my comment is to try.
yeah, no, I understand that. I think part of the problem with this spot is canopy doesn't matter. In some respects, that there's too much sun coming into the forest floor from the property that surrounds it.
Yeah.
So to rely on the canopy alone to protect this spot may not work.
No, but it's helping. Sure.
All right, so
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, every time I go up there, it's worse. And what is worse is not the trees, it's the shrubs.
Yeah.
And
Paul, when the decision is made, the FSA is ready to help when that occurs.
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be talking to Crystal Crampton. In any case, it's not really my piece of ground to mess with. Everything I'm going to be doing going forward is going to be approved by Crystal.
I will thank you, Paul and Paul. If there aren't any other comments, we should move on to Parks and Rec. Greg, can you give us our update? Thank you, Paul, for updating us on the our and the cemetery cleanup.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Mr. Sachs.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. So Healing Garden, we've been completing some ongoing maintenance there. We've had too many volunteer days to count, but we've focused on weeding and adding, now that the plants are taller than, you know, an inch or two, we've added a much thicker layer of mulch to the complete garden area. We did receive the donation for maintenance from the Nancy D. Davidson Foundation. That was in the amount of $2,500. To date, we've spent $1,433.50 of that donation, just going through and saving the baby plants. And that was spent on all maintenance, weeding, mulching, through red tail restoration. Also, the FSA has been, we've been working with them. They've weed whacked the perimeter of the gardens and are helping us to put a nice layer of mulch there as well to keep the weeds down. Of course, it's, you know, it's going to be an ongoing project, but as the desirable plants get bigger, that'll, you know, shade out and help keep out the less desirable weeds. So that's that. The fall 2022 tree planting, again, it's scheduled for October 1st and October 2nd. It's going to be held at Crossan Park and Franklin Preserve. We have received the funding check from the Dockstader Foundation. That was a $7,000 funding check that we got. We are currently working on getting some signage quotes that should be, you know, is covered through that donation or that funding. We're still waiting to hear from the nursery as far as an updated tree list and quote on the supplies for their fall quotes. We expect hopefully by the next Board of Supervisors meeting to get the final updated quote. I do know, like I said before, that prices are going up. So it's just a matter of, what we do, whether or not we need more funding and or less trees. So all that we're going to hope to figure out once we get this updated quote from the nursery. Also, I will be creating, I'm actually was working on it right now, creating a Facebook event for this tree planting. So if you're on Facebook and you see this event, please join us and add yourself to the event. The next up was the volunteer garden plaques. So the Pro Board has voted to recommend to obtain 3 with a possible 4th small 5x7 plaques to be installed in the volunteer garden plots at Crossing Park. The reason for these plaques is to honor the people, the volunteers who are, keep upkeeping these certain garden plots. Again, they're 5x7, and they would have wording on them, basically saying that this garden plot is adopted by so and so. The plaque that we chose are $16.95 each. If you spend like 30 something dollars, the shipping is free. So we're looking at, under $100, even if you include the 4th plaque. The reason I say the 4th plaque is because I've been speaking with another resident who is interested in maintaining one of the plots. So that's a new addition, hopefully, to our volunteer squad at Crossing. I was going to go over movie night, which was postponed till this Saturday on the 23rd. I see on the agenda that Jeff is going to give an update, so I will leave that one alone and let Jeff go over that. The only other thing that I had was Matt, who is our trail installation volunteer. He is planning on installing a connector trail between Crossing Park and Paradox Vineyard. This is the trail is mostly going to be on Paradox property, but there is a small portion that will connect on the northeastern side of Crossing Park. It is, if you want to see where exactly I'm talking, it's very roughly shown on the new map that's on the Township website. We believe this is a beneficial trail to not only the park visitors, but also winery visitors, and, connect the both of them, which, making a walkable community, I know, is a big thing to a lot of people. I have also discussed with Matt about, making sure to lessen the impact on existing trees and plant life and keeping that as minimal as possible. So with that said, the only other thing I had was the Auburn Road property update, and I was going to pass that over to Paul Overton, who has been heading that project. So Paul, if you're around.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So I believe the supervisors are aware that the township signed off on the closing of the property, I guess 3 weeks ago. Thanks for doing that, Dave and Jeff. And that the deal is done, and so the property is preserved, and we have a trail easement there. I have not seen the property up for sale, but I believe that'll be the next step. Does anybody have any questions on it? I guess Donna's usually the one that has the questions, but she's not here tonight. Oh, so, well, thank you all for for supporting us.
Sorry, Paul, I was on mute here, but, so I was there at the closing and a couple of comments, but, I talked to the owner, he, just a little background this was his mom's property. And I asked him about pictures and anything he might have on the property when it was, lived in and taken care of. And he got very excited because his mom kept copious notes and many journals, drawing pictures of the wildlife and the flowers. And so lots of information. And the reason I brought that up is we were talking about, as we build out some of these trails, it would be nice to have some information on what some of these places look like. So you have some information. And so I don't know if he's going to reach out. I think he's going to reach out to Jeff with some pictures and maybe some notes on what the property was all about. I mean, apparently it's just decades and decades of these pictures and journals and notes on what was growing up over the years. So it's very, they're very positive. They're very happy that they were able to get this done. So it's, and, Jeff and I, we just showed up and watched Paul. We really did a lot of work getting this done. And I don't want to, understate that. It's you really did a phenomenal job getting all of this stuff coordinated, because without you, probably wouldn't have happened.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I saw they had an article in the local paper, right? I actually didn't see it in paper, but someone sent me a link to it.
Yeah, I saw that a little bit in the paper.
Yeah.
So good
Yeah, and
work.
I was going to add that I saw another article on phillyvoice.com about it, and apparently the owners were descendants of Howard Pyle, the artist. So yeah, it's another interesting article if you're interested in checking it out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but that's according to phillyvoice.com, this article, that's what they said.
So I'll move on to the little bullet points. Jeff, farmers market movie night.
Sure. With this first one, I'd like to have some help from Dawn. But the good news is it looks like our farmers market / artisans day is going to pull together. Right now, we have the what I'll call our Southern Amish community will be doing the chicken barbecue. They hope to have mums and pumpkins. We do have a local blacksmith artisan, CJ Kiernan, I apologize. He's planning on attending, having some items for sale and giving some demonstrations as well. And cool.
Try to do the plant swap and see what we can do with that. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna reach out and see if we can't find any other eager beavers to help us out with this. We hope that once we get it off the ground and people get excited about it, I think it's been like herding cats trying to get it done, but yeah.
The nice thing is, the road rancher will be there as well. And it's set up so they don't.
Yeah.
So
So
that, you know, so
chicken and burgers.
Yeah,
That's how,
it'll be
yeah.
all grass-fed beef and the natural chicken from here, all from our township.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
And then, Cool Breeze Nursery from the northern part of our township, had stated that they would like to attend and sell microgreens to the public if they would be interested.
I think that's really showing off what we have right here.
Yep.
Beautiful.
It's going to be a neat event.
Yeah.
Like Greg was saying, unfortunately, our movie night from this past Saturday night was canceled due to rain and thunder. So it has been rescheduled for this Saturday evening. And it looks like we're going to have a good turnout. Again, the road ranger will be there. We will have some free giveaways. And Medic 94 will make a presence. State Police will, and then possibly a fire truck from Avondale Fire Company may come if there are no emergencies, just for the kids, to climb on. So the Road Rancher will be there starting at 5 o'clock Saturday. And then we anticipate the movie starting right about 9 p.m.
Great. Great. Hopefully the weather holds out.
Good news. It's supposed to be sunny but hot.
Yeah. That's the story, right?
Oh, I forgot, I'm glad Jim Johnson popped up. The FSA will be donating a lot of time that evening for traffic control and trash control as well. So I'm looking forward to them being there as well.
Well, last movie night was a big hit. I'm glad we're doing it again. And this is a nice little event that we put on.
And Jeff, don't forget you owe Jim a hot dog.
Yeah. I'll get him a hot dog and a hamburger.
Yeah. So I would just like to say that Jeff was like so kind to print out a bunch of flyers and the aviation camp here that John Martin has with all the youth. Each of those campers have a movie night flyer
Oh, good.
to attend. So we're really like coming into New Garden Township here. You know, so Jeff like printed off like some awesome flyers and each camper had a flyer to take home.
The other exciting thing is too, Melissa, I didn't get a chance to tell you, but I had put flyers up at Giant and McDonald's and CVS and Walgreens, and remarkably, they've been up for over a week. So I'm hoping that the park will really be packed.
We're gonna have to start
Yeah.
charging.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I
What
hope
would be
so.
great, what would be great is if we could do this maybe twice next year, but
Yeah.
it's a pretty impressive screen because it's 40 feet by 20 feet. So
I agree.
it's got an awesome sound system to it as well.
Yeah, last
Yeah.
year, it's a fantastic event. So,
So please spread the word. We want to make it a success.
Pico.
Pico, this has been a long time in coming. I've been working on this for 2 years. I think we're almost at the goal line. But we did cross a major hurdle with Pico to extend our trail system from Crossan Park and Franklin Preserve into the White Clay substation. There are some specific requirements that we will have to meet, which I don't personally see a problem with. They did have me move on, Pico did, to apply for what they call a license holder for that trail. So I did fill out some additional paperwork and submitted that with a check. So it's not 100% sure, but it certainly seems like we're coming to the end here, and it's got the great possibility of being a positive outcome.
All right. Anything else? So before we move on, anything else for Greg, Don, or Jeff on the Park and Rec and open space conversation? All right, not hearing any, we can move on. Don?
Well, unfortunately, the planning commission meeting was canceled for July 7th
Okay.
because it is the summer and a
Yeah,
lot of people are not here.
a bunch of folks were traveling and so, oh, you know, your Mike.
Oh,
All right, so let's move on. I don't know, has Ron joined us?
Ron's not here yet. I can go into that, or we can skip over Ron temporarily and we can go to Mr. Hotchkiss, so
Yeah,
he
why don't
doesn't
we
have
do
to stay
that?
the night.
Why don't we go right,
He's
skip
been so
down
patient.
to business A and go on to Mr. Hotchkiss. So this is the Medic 94 funding request. You know, Bob, do you want to start off with a little overview?
Yeah, one of the things we did last year is we went to the new formula, which we initiated last August with all of the municipalities, which is the balance of the formula is based on the millage, the population, and the call volume. And we put that out in August. What happened was in October, when they said the hospital was closing, we said, well, we're gonna need to add some capacity. We're gonna need to add some additional providers. And we said, this is what we envision is how much it's gonna cost. It's probably another $200,000 for 2022 to be able to add that additional capacity. What we asked the municipalities is, this is what the supplemental would look like, but don't pay it right now, because we didn't know when the hospital would reopen, or we didn't know if those costs were real. Some of those costs were based on us having to move out, and which we haven't done. So after 6 months, what I did is gathered what it has actually cost us. We were able to staff about 75% of the time, that additional capacity. So we didn't have the higher payroll numbers that we thought we would have. Our supply costs are right about on schedule. Our fuel costs, and that was fuel not only because our vehicles are traveling more, our vehicle mileage is up 40%. And it's also the cost of fuel. But we were fortunate enough to get a grant from Senator Committa to cover some of the capital costs we had built into that. And we didn't have to move out, so we didn't have to pay rent, and we didn't have some other station relocation expenses. So what we did was, after 6 months, we sat down to all the municipal partners and said, this is our cost for the 6 months. And I believe in the check I got the other day, I believe you put that in there. I don't have the amount in front of me, but it seemed to be a little higher than normal. So I don't know if that was your first 6 months.
Melissa can better talk to that if she's still here.
Yeah, I'm still here. So it was for the first 6 months, it was 29,000. Hold on, I'm flipping through all the papers. Hold on. So it was. So it was just what it was proposed as, 29. I guess I didn't bring that sheet, Bob. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I forgot it too. I just catched it the other day. It should be fresh in my head. But,
yeah, it was like 29,000. I'm gonna say it was under $25,000. So it was $24,492 and like some odd cents.
okay, because I believe what we asked last year was for the 24,360 was the regular assessment. And then the additional 3,591 was the first 6 months of the additional. So it was like 20, maybe it was 29.
Oh, maybe it could have been 29. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So we are expecting to have to continue this additional staffing. I'm not sure if I was here before the Christiana announcement last time. It's all running together. But the Christiana announcement is exciting. And we are remaining in our facility for now. We're in the building. It's nice to see the Christiana folks coming in and starting their assessment of what's there. It's a high quality healthcare system, very community oriented, familiar to a lot of people because a lot of people go down to Christiana. I think that one of the reasons that came up here is a lot of people that they see at Christiana Hospital have zip codes up here, and they're saying, hey, why don't we just go ahead and establish that base up there. Their plans, I know that the 2 talking points that they always remind me to tell everybody are, it's not going to happen overnight. And what you will have in the future will be nothing like you had in the past at the hospital, at the facility. So I think they're still doing their assessment, and they have not announced any timetables or anything like that. The good news is we're still there, and we expect to be able to stay there. We kind of have a verbal deal right now, and we're working on that. They've been very supportive of us. They're asking for information, and I believe there's a meeting on August 4th that Representative Lawrence has set up with Christiana. They're very interested in going out and hearing what the community thinks they should have up there. So that's something that they're very conscious about, is before they fix their plan, they want to hear what worked in the past, what didn't work in the past, what you think the community needs. So I think they're in a listening phase. Again, they haven't announced any timetables. I would assume that there's nothing's gonna happen before the new year. It's just a guess, because there is some facility construction they're probably planning on doing, and some additional, and you have to hire and things like that. So I don't know their timetable, and I think that's something that I know the community was excited when they're coming in there. We were excited when they were coming in there, and I think now everybody is now, what are your plans and what is the timetable? So the pressure's on them now. So we're excited about that, but we're adding that additional capacity. Our call volume's up about 16%. Depending on what kind of capacity they have to do when they reopen, will depend a lot on that call volume. A lot of our call volume, additional call volume, is based on patients that may in the past just driven to the hospital, and now they're like, geez, I have to drive 40 minutes. I'm afraid I'm not gonna make it that far, so I'm gonna call 911. So that's resulting in some of the call volume, we think, going up. So once the hospital opens, we'll make adjustments on where we stand for what kind of capacity we need in the community as far as staffing. But at this point, we're pretty much focused on continuing our additional staffing through the end of the year, and then we'll make a decision where we are next year.
That's exciting news for you
It is.
especially.
It is exciting. It's nice to have more than just 3 of us in the building. It's us, the security guard, and maintenance, and my medics. So it's a little bit more conversation going on these days. So it is kind of nice, but I just don't know their plans as of this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table. So before we go to the motion, any questions for Bob? Jim, Don? No?
That's great.
All right. So I make a motion that the board approve the SCCEMS Medic 94 funding request as presented by Robert Hotchkiss. Can I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Don. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 3-0. All right, thank you. We will try.
Yeah, well,
I may
that'll,
see you Saturday night.
that won't be easy.
Yeah, All
Thank
right.
you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Drive safe. All right, Don.
Okay, we are now on our comprehensive plan discussion and public comment. We have the announcement of the public hearing to adopt the 2022 comprehensive plan will be August 17th, 2022.
Yes, and so again, just a little bit of a procedural note. We started this process 2 years ago, it seems now. And the process has gone from a township-wide survey to a township open house to a committee to create this document. We then brought this to the PC for approval. And then they worked on it for a number of months and got it to a place where they felt the board could approve it. And then it came to the board and we had a short discussion, went through it and had a public comment session. And so now we are going to make our final vote on whether or not we adopt this comprehensive plan on August 17th. And so this agenda item has been on our agenda the last 2 months, just to give the public ample opportunity to come in, say, here's what I think, and state your opinions. So that's the process, and this is why it's on the agenda. I don't have anything specific to say on the content of the document. Jim or Dawn, if you have something you'd like to talk about, that's absolutely
I
up to you.
think we've pounded it to death.
We did do that for
But
sure.
but we feel like we've come out with a good plan.
Yeah, I think it's good. So
And we did send it out to the surrounding municipalities and then Cecil County, Maryland too, and we've got no feedback.
No news is
They're
good
all-
news.
Dave, I'll just say that you were generous in saying that we had a short conversation with them. That's for the record.
okay. So any comments on the plan, anything you want from the public?
Yeah, I'd like to make just one quick comment, and it's rather specific. In chapter 5, section 1.3, and this refers to the second bullet point. This had originally been written so that it said amend zoning and saldo to require pedestrian walkways in developed areas. That came out of the planning commission saying promote pedestrian walkways in developed areas. Given the goal that has been set at the beginning of that chapter to connect residents to trails and walkways, it strikes me that the resulting wording, if you don't want to end up with something that actually requires amending zoning and saldo, is really not strong enough to achieve what is going to be needed. And so at the very least, I would recommend something that said something like prioritize the creation of walkways in all developed areas of the township, especially as part of the land development process. I think that the mere promotion of something is really something that our zoning already does. It really doesn't, and we've gotten to a point where, you know, we had discussions about the fact that people who live in neighborhoods are not well connected to trails. I think that that's largely correct. You can't necessarily undo the past overnight. I'm a little too familiar with that with respect to other subjects, but I think that the township needs a stronger focus than it has had in a while on this, and stronger language here, even if it doesn't contain something calling for the amending of the zoning and saldo, would indicate a real will to accomplish this.
Mhm.
And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. So we can talk about that once we have 2 meetings, a workshop meeting and then the August 17th meeting, and we can add that wording and suggestion.
Mhm.
And I'd like to have that conversation with the full board.
Yeah.
So let's bring that in at that, either we
I
start
can
talking-
send this as a written comment to
Please
Jeff.
do.
Yeah,
I was trying to make notes here, but please do.
yeah,
And then we can talk about it as a board to amend the
Sure.
wording. So,
that'd be great.
but that's it's a good point, Paul. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
So do we have, so any other comments before we move on? We're gonna kind of jump back to the road program. Ron's not with us, but I don't want to postpone that much longer. So maybe we'll just go through it with you, Jeff. I think you can probably handle it.
Sure.
So before I change the subject, is there any other comment on the comprehensive plan? All right, so let's go to the road program. So I'm not going to introduce Ron Reagan. I'm going to introduce Jeffrey Eastburn. Jeff?
Good evening, everybody. Just to give a brief update about our paving program, we are anticipating that starting the end of September. That hasn't changed very much, but we are looking forward to that.
This is the same paver we used last year.
Correct, Long's paving.
Okay.
We did have a bid opening today for 2 projects. The first one is the Churchill Road Drainage Project, and that basically exists from Queen Lane on Churchill Road to just past Bill Scalish's house south of Creek Road. So we did receive 3 bids today. And this entails installing approximately 14 to 15 inlet boxes, a lot of culvert pipe, and some head walls there. So I'll go through the bids that we'd received. I'll start with the most expensive one first. From Moore Construction out of Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. And that was a total of $670,850. The second one is from Bertollet Construction out of Wernersville, Pennsylvania. That was at $116,980. And the third and final one was from J. Dominic Durazio, also known as Yardworks, in the amount of $99,540.80. Let me find my sheet here. Ron Reagan and I did review the bids. So both Ron and I recommend that the Churchill Road drainage project go to Yardworks in the amount of $99,540.80. So if the board would like to discuss that first, consider the motion, and I can move on to the other items.
I assume we probably have the same question that popped to our head is we've got two bids that are close to each other that I would expect. And then we've got one bid that is probably more than we spent on our entire road program this year.
Correct.
So any indication when you look at a bid package and say, well, how did they get this number?
Well, it could be a couple of things. They threw a number against the wall to see if it would stick.
Okay.
See if we would bite at it. The other item is they could have misinterpreted something, but to the township's credit, we did have an on-site pre-bid meeting.
Okay.
So with being there with Ron, I personally feel everyone should have understood everything.
Okay.
Just to clarify too, the township has bought the culvert pipe and as well as the inlet boxes and head walls. We have
So
what
we
one
already
more.
have that.
Mhm.
Okay.
We have one more load of what I'll call the inlet box material to come in on Friday. So those materials are a very hot commodity and very hard to find in a realistic time frame anymore. But I did have a conversation, and I see he's on, at least I think he's on here this evening, Jim Durazio. So he has assured me that he will be able to get the work done in the time that we're looking to have it done. And
Okay.
he's got the manpower as well as the equipment. So I know Jim has done other projects for us in the past. A couple of the extensive ones were Peacedale Road by the Peacedale Preserve and Franklin Road, which was quite extensive. And the other one I was reminded of today was Walker Road, where we ended up working with Mr. Wilkinson and put that pipe under the road and to the outfall, kind of sort of at the side rear of his house. And that was a quite extensive project too, a very satisfying one once it was done. It really made things a lot better.
Jeff, have we ever had more construction bid on things before?
We have not.
Well, that's what I wondered, if they're a new entity.
Well, they're new to us.
Okay.
They have done other work. I think it would be fair to say that Ron Reagan was a little surprised today at the price they
Right,
gave.
okay.
He was anticipating it being more in line with the
Yeah,
others.
okay.
But one of the main things we did, we sat down and with Melissa today and Ron and I, and we looked and again, I feel the bid was clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's no looking back and saying, I wish we would have,
Yeah.
or, you know, we could have.
Okay.
All right, so any other comments or questions before I read the motion?
No.
Okay, so and just to be clear, it's just a recommendation that we award this bid to Yardworks. And I make this motion because there's another motion that it's a motion to reject, so. Proposed motion for Churchill Road. I make a motion to award the Churchill Road Drainage Project bid package to J. Dominic DeRazio Incorporated in the amount of $99,540.80. And that J. Dominic DeRazio Incorporated submit the necessary paperwork, bonds, and insurance certificates as outlined in the bid package to the township engineer and staff. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Don. All right, any other discussion on this bid proposal? Okay, not hearing any other discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 3-0. Okay, so the next one is the Heather Hills Drive grading project.
Yes. This was a bit of a personal disappointment for me. This project involved Heather Hills Drive at Chesterville Road. I'd say about 60% of the issue was dealing with site distance, and the remaining 40% was actually stormwater. So we took the approach of working with Steve Castriani, and with the prices of today, with the bid that we received, the single bid was $238,000. So right now, it's the recommendation of Ron Reagan and myself that we table this project for this year, and then we look to revisit it in a following year, just because of how prices seem to be all over the place this year.
So this the Heather Hills Drive project is a grading project. Sightline on that corner is terrible.
Correct.
So, and we've all acknowledged that the sightline is terrible. What the project at a high level, as I understand it, would require removing some trees, which would not be handled by this construction company. That's already been taken care of. We got actually a pretty good price on that.
Yes.
I wonder if we should do that anyway in anticipation of future work. Now, we don't need to answer that, but the second question is, well, once the trees are gone, it's moving dirt. It's moving dirt from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill on how many, 100, not even 100 yards of.
It's a good bit, Dave.
Okay.
From our original perspective from the road,
Yeah.
and then walking up there, it's quite different.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
quite eye-opening.
Okay. So I guess my question would be that this is a shocking number. I mean, my ignorant, understanding that we're just really moving a whole lot of dirt up a hill. I guess that's why we're rejecting it, is that, and so my question would be, do you have an idea of what a reasonable offer would have been? What would be in the township's estimation of a good offer?
I think this would be fair to say that Ron wasn't expecting a number above 100,000.
Mhm.
But you're in a sense reading my mind, Dave, because when I have time over the next week or two, I would like to work with Mr. Castriani and see about
Mhm.
doing the tree work. Whether it's this fall or in the springtime. We had received prices for the tree work, which I thought was incredibly reasonable from one company at $17,500. And then it went as high as $30,000. There were some estimates by a few of the contractors that attended our pre-bid meeting that, it could be upwards of $60,000 to do. But I know it's not good to give my opinion on things, but I think some companies rely on cranes too heavily versus using climbers.
Mhm.
And with the climber estimates that we've received, They are the lower ones, instead of getting a big crane and parking it out on Chesterville Road for 2, 3, 4 days.
All right, so do any other comments or questions on this project before I read the motion? All right. I make a motion to reject the Heather Hills Drive grading project bid package from Moore Construction Services Incorporated in the amount of $238,000. Can I have a second? Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries 3-0.
Can I give a further update, Dave, on some
Please.
projects? Currently, we have yard work starting on a stormwater management issue at 113 Preakness. So again, taking the role of meeting with the residents personally so they know what's going on. At the end of the day, our project will be for yard works to stabilize the end of a outfall pipe from a underground stone infiltration pit. So once that's completed, that will be something that's been hanging out there for a long time and will finally be resolved. Both Ron Reagan and I and Mr. Brock and Juanita Bennett met. It was either yesterday or the day before. I'm losing track of my days. Regarding a stormwater project between 8 Ways Run and 12 Ways Run. What we want to do is divide this up into a 2-phase project with a couple of inlet boxes and some piping. And then if we need to do more the following year, we can, instead of just blowing it out the first time. And fortunately, we ran into Mr. Gerstenhaber too during that time. He had come by, and both neighbors, Mr. Brock and Miss Bennett, both agreed to the phase approach. So we are hoping to have a bid to go out by the beginning of August. So we're looking forward to bringing that before the board at the August workshop meeting, for you're okay with that. The other project we're going to be talking about is at Cavender and Mackey, which is an area that has very little storm water management facilities. And it's been quite the challenge because what is on the actual subdivision plan isn't what's actually in the field. So Mr. Reagan will be coming up with some ideas by our August 1st meeting to bring that to the public to discuss it. And then if we can decide on a plan, the next step will be to engage the any residents if we need to. But we're moving along.
Thank you, Jeff. So I think one of the issues on the stormwater issue on Ways was the utility boxes that are in the way. So I think we're gonna try that first, and then if we can't get any satisfaction from the utilities, to try and figure out how to remove them, work around them. Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. I did actually get to a human being at Pico, which I normally can. They're a great organization to work with. And the other one is Comcast. Verizon's still the outlier. So the end result of my talks with them is they're going to try and get us a plan of that area. So we know, and we're not relying on, no offense to 811, but so we're just not relying on that.
Right.
And then it will give Ron a little bit of breathing room to do any tweaks if he needs to.
Yeah. I think, Juanita had mentioned might be some live wires or something buried under the ground. Yeah. All right. Good. Thank you, Jeff.
And Ron, I hate to say it, but you don't have to talk this evening.
Oh, geez.
Everything's going to plan, young man.
So we're good to go.
Yes,
You're
sir.
good. Thank you for your work, Ron. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Hey, before Ron drops off, can we ask him questions?
Would you like to ask Ron a question?
Yeah, before he drops off. It sounds like he was about to. So I was waiting for the public comment, but while Ron's here, on the Churchill Road,
Yes.
you're awarding $100,000 to Durazio. Just curious, what was Ron's estimate for that work?
I think,
I mentioned, I read it in the motion. It was 99,000.
No,
The
that's the
estimate.
bid.
Oh.
What was Ron's estimate?
Oh, Ron's estimate, sorry.
it was somewhere south of $100,000. I don't have that paperwork with me. I think it was somewhere in the 80s to $90,000, somewhere in that range.
And
But
and then-
everything that I've bid in the last 6 months has come in significantly higher than any estimates that I had, because my estimates were based on unit costs that I've had that are, 6 months to a year old. So, the guys probably, Dave or Jeff probably read the other estimates that we've got. One was.
Yep.
Yeah, we went through them, Ron.
One was like 300% higher.
Yeah.
So then, and that didn't answer your question, but it was somewhere in the 80 to 90,000, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yep. So, Jeff, you said the township bought the pipe and boxes separate from the 100,000. So can you tell me what the total cost of the project is? Like, what's the pipe and boxes add up to?
Roughly, Paul, without you holding me to it, would be the boxes and the head walls, roughly $20,000. And roughly the same for the pipe. I don't have the exact penny in me. I have that in my 3-ring binder on my desk, but that's generally.
And you guys can fit this into the road program?
This is not the road program, this is stormwater.
All right. So I didn't know if there's any basins, you didn't show any drawings or anything, but is there any MS4 credits that you can get out of this stormwater work? Or since it doesn't retain, you don't get credit? I don't know how that works.
I don't.
We probably should talk to LTL, but I would doubt it because we're putting it into a pipe and there's no infiltration. We're probably eliminating some erosion, but we're not, doing infiltration, roadside swales or anything like that. So it's not a specific BMP.
I thought since you were eliminating erosion, you might get something, but yeah, if you don't have any basins or infiltration,
Generally, you don't get credit for erosion reduction if you're using some sort of hard surface or mechanical or, pipe, something like that. You have to do some kind of a environmentally friendly or vegetation or something like that.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. All
Hang
right,
on, Dave. So this has nothing to do with our road program. This is all ARPA funds. So it's
Yes.
totally different from, so I just want to point that fact out. Like, this is all American Rescue Fund money that we're spending for the stormwater program.
Okay. Thanks. That's good to know.
All right, thanks, Melissa. So then we go to the next, this is actually our last point of business for public comment.
Dave, Dave, excuse me, if I may, then I'm going to go back to my other meeting. Sorry, I didn't get in.
Yes, thank you, Ron.
Thank
Okay.
you, Ron.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Yep, take care.
I think it's me, right, Dave?
All right, Jim.
All right. I have the pleasure of announcing and welcoming Guy Donatelli as a solicitor to our first meeting, and he's going to talk about staff positions.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here, and I appreciate the introduction. We have a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a reorganization, but we have a division of labor between Mr. Eastburn and Ms. Ortega as as those responsibilities relate to their particular strengths. The roles, the responsibilities of the township manager are going to be divided into two separate offices, the Office of Township Operations Manager and the Office of Township Controller Office Manager, with Mr. Eastburn suggested to the board as the Operations Manager and Ms. Ortega suggested as the Controller and Office Manager. So our office took a look at what was necessary to do that. We put together a resolution which is presented to the board tonight as Resolution 2022-09. I would recommend that the board consider that resolution favorably. And then if there are any questions with respect to why it was done this way, resolution as opposed to ordinance, and what the form of resolution is, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Jim or Don, questions?
I'm great about this. This is wonderful.
Yep, I don't have any questions. Should I make the motion?
So I just because I always have a question. I do have a question. We were talking the two options. What is the difference between us putting in an ordinance versus a resolution? Why do we do a resolution rather than an ordinance?
So there are obligations under the second-class township code that require ordinances on occasion. And then there are obligations under the second-class township code that can be done through motion or resolution. This particular act, this legislative act, can be done by resolution. If at some point you desire to amend your ordinance to provide for changes that directly affect the township manager's ordinance that you have, we can do that by ordinance. But we're simply creating two staff positions. When it was originally discussed, I think it was going to be done by ordinance. I looked at that. I think this is the way to go. My recommendation is that this is the way to go, and you can formalize things into an ordinance, or you can do it this way. And in my experience, when you're parsing out responsibilities that would normally fall under the township manager's position, you can do it by resolution, and it's done quite frequently.
So I don't have the ordinance in front of me or memorized, but I believe we have an ordinance for the creation of a township manager and their responsibilities. And what we did was separate out all of those responsibilities into the two new positions. So is the resolution kind of like a subsection of our ordinance where we say we further clarified how we were going to handle the responsibilities that the ordinance states?
No, I don't think it's a subsection of your township manager's ordinance. If the board decides at some point that they want to eliminate the position of township manager, in other words, second-class townships don't have to have a township manager's ordinance. Right. They don't have to have a township manager. So at some point, if the board decided after discussing it with Mr. Eastburn that we really don't feel a need to have that office, township manager's office here, then I would recommend that township ordinance relating to the township manager's position be repealed. Okay. But this is not a subsection of that.
Okay.
And I have not had that conversation with the township yet, and we will if you wish to have it.
Well, I guess my question would be, how does this coexist with the ordinance?
It stands alone. It stands alone.
And the township manager ordinance is just vacated or not acted.
I would recommend it. Go ahead, Jeff. You have a question?
The board had voted to eliminate the township manager's position.
Okay.
Yes.
They did take a vote at a public meeting for that to be eliminated. And then they did take a public vote for my position and then Melissa's position. I'll call it positions.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that satisfies it or not.
No, it doesn't. I was pleased to see the responsibilities laid out in the resolution, which was the most important thing for me, was to see exactly what authority you were giving
Right.
your two new officers.
Right.
If the board is interested in simply eliminating that township manager's ordinance, I can do that in a half a page. And you could have it on your, agenda
Yeah,
in your August meeting if you wish.
that would make it clean. wouldn't it?
I think so. I think it would make it cleaner.
That would clean it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is nothing in the second-class township code that talks about the office of township operations manager or township controller / office manager. So
So we're creating our new.
you're creating it a little home cooking, I would say.
Okay,
And it's fine to do that.
That's
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Good.
So we'll delete and replace.
Yeah.
Or replace and delete.
We'll do that for the 17th meeting.
Fine, yes. And I'll
Is
get,
that a
a-
record, would that?
I'll
be-
get if it's okay with the board, I'll get an advertisement out and we'll do that.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good. All right, so Jim, do you want to read the motion for us?
Sure. So I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-09 to establish the position of Township Operations Manager, which Jeff Eastburn currently serves, and Melissa Ortega as Township Controller and Office Manager, which Melissa Ortega currently serves. Can I have a second?
Sure, I'll second that, Jim.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All right. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Say nay. Okay. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. All right, so the next one is Crown Castle. Sublease.
Sure, yes, I have less, and I'll just be candid about it. I have less history with the Crown Castle Dish Network sublease agreement, which is in my partner Helen Mountain's wheelhouse. I know that she went over the sublease agreement as it relates to Dish with Mr. Eastburn. I spoke with Helen this afternoon on the issue. I don't think there are any issues with the Dish agreement. I know that we are awaiting an affidavit on the master lease, which is not on the agenda tonight.
Correct.
So I'm perfectly comfortable recommending the approval of the Dish sublease agreement and the execution of the consent letter.
Thank you very much. So last month, we had this conversation about this topic, and there was some confusion about what the structure of this lease agreement was, and we really just needed some clarification. And so we got some additional information, and I think as you just laid it out, there's two leases, if you will. One is the master lease for the tower, and then it's for subleasing to Dish. That was what was confusing the board last month. We were
I can imagine it's complicated.
right. So we said, let's get some clarification so we can vote on this. So that's where we are. So Dawn or Jim, do you have any questions on that agreement?
No, I understand now.
Yeah.
Okay.
This helped.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Jim, you want
And
to?
I would like to add that I did work with Helen and I confirmed all the amounts that she came up with. So we are receiving what the amount she came up with that we should be getting. So
Great.
And that's 8,000 and 12,000?
It's 24,000 annually.
yeah,
12,000 going to the township annually with a 4% escalator clause.
Right.
So yeah, so that was the. Yes, okay.
Correct.
yeah. So every month I get a check for 4,900 and then a check for $11,000, $12,000 for both of those things.
Okay.
So with this $12,000 with Dish, we're actually getting more than what was originally outlined in the 1999 agreement with.
Correct.
Council.
Right.
So we are getting
It's my-
more than,
Yes, with the 4% escalator.
yep.
Right. That's great.
Beautiful.
Not when CPI is 9% though. But that, we'll take it.
We're gonna try that one with the master site agreement, Jim.
I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So I think I'm ready to read the resolution if nobody has any other comments. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the Dish sublease agreement and sign the consent letter as reviewed and approved by Helen Mountain of Lamb McErling office. And could I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Don.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you very much, Jim. All right, so we'll move on to our second public comment. This public comment may include comments on anything attendees might want to share. Commenters must state their name and whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer of the township. Do we have anyone with public comment?
It's John Arbach. I'm a township resident. Just kind of reiterating a comment I made previously about stream restoration projects and how fragile they are, and just that the board fully understand their obligation to maintain it if it gets washed out. So I would just consider that point very carefully versus other BMPs, like the tree planting is almost immune from weather issues. You just need to maintain the weeds under the trees. So they're the preferred projects. So that's
that's kind of one of the questions that I'm glad you brought that up, because the questions that I had was, and you actually articulated it, which was, do we lose control of our own destiny when we hand over our money? And they're going to do the stream restoration. And if we end up having to foot the bill, we might be paying triple, quadruple the cost if we just didn't plant some trees in the first place. So I think it's something we need good clarification on from
And whether
LTL.
we have any input on what the
What they're gonna
projects
do.
are.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions. I mean, obviously we're not making any decisions here, but certainly there's a lot of questions to ask before we go down that path.
I lose my baby Elk Creek stream bridge almost every other year.
Yeah, you get a 50 or 100-year storm in the summer. Just blows that stuff right away.
You got it.
You know, this contract that they're talking about with PennDOT, you need to be sure that you understand what your liability is. That project gets blown out, whether they come back to you for additional costs to restore it. So that's really that's the end of the comment.
All right. Thanks, John.
You're welcome. A very good meeting tonight.
Thanks, John.
Any other public comments? All right, so I'm going to propose a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting at 8:53 p.m. Can I have a second? All right, Don. Any comment or discussion? All right, I think this motion carries 3-0. All right, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Oh my goodness.